Hello everybody, how are you all doing? So this is gonna be my probably first video where I'll be covering actually a proper topic. Not that I never covered serious topics before, but this is gonna be the first time I'm gonna upload it on YouTube actually. Because I do believe it is something that is underestimated and that it could actually help many people, whether it's my surroundings or any other person who's researching the topic on YouTube. So I'm gonna talk about eating disorders actually. And I have many reasons to cover this particular topic. Yes, indeed, because it is underestimated, because from my experience, I wish I could have access to such a video, or to hear the right words, or to be to taken into charge at the right moment. It could have saved me so much time. It could have prevented me from slipping so many times. It could have speeded up many things in my life, and I was pretty lucky to get out of it without any significant damage to my health. I would say I'm still in recovery at the moment. I'm not fully recovered from my bulimia, so I switched to so I'm gonna just start by giving a general idea for how it happens. I was affected by anorexia during my teens, around when I was 14, then slipped to harshly vomitive bulimia at around the age of 17, I would say. 16, 17. And then it kind of kept coming and going until it hit the toll during my 24th year, I would say, probably 24th. And then I really started taking it into charge, in a proper way, because it started to jeopardize my health at some point. In a very serious way, it started to hamper any other activity I would be doing. It hampered my college studies a little bit. I could have graduated much earlier than I did, not only because I was looking for myself, but because I wanted to try so many things, so it kind of also delayed my graduation, but partly also because I was sick, simply. So it did make me sick. And yes, I did lost lots of money because of it, because half of the money you would receive would just go into the toilet, so as of vomiting your food, or to buy just irrational quantities of food that would end up being spoiled, simply, or getting into any other addictions, getting into any activity which would turn into an addiction. I mean, it caused me lots of problems. Eventually, I wish my parents could have handled this in a more professional way. I have to say that both of my parents are doctors. So my mom is a dentist, my dad is a gynecologist. I'm mostly so I'm still grateful. If at some point of my life I was very, very angry at my mother because she would just refuse to admit that the problem was here. I was sick, and something had to be done with it, and I wasn't getting out of it on my own, and I was struggling. It was hard for her to actually accept it. It's not easy. I mean, she could see it. She could see the symptoms, and still, well, owing to many reasons, I'm digressing over here, but she couldn't handle it in the way she should have handled it as a doctor and as a mother. But then she apologized, and she did her best to then catch up on this and to help me in any way she could later on, for which I'm very grateful to her. From my dad's side, sadly, things never got restored. We will probably never talk to each other for the rest of our lives. And I am angry at him. Not only angry, I'm he could have done so many things to bring the situation to a better ending, it was his choice to refuse. It was his choice just to watch. It was his choice to worsen things on purpose. As a doctor, as a gynecologist, eating disorders are a very, very common problem within women owing to hormonal imbalances. Not because you work with hormones when you're a gynecologist. Hormonal imbalance is not uncommon in a gynecologist's career. This does trigger eating disorders. In the Middle East, eating disorders are a very, very, very common problem, but it's a big taboo also. You almost never talk about it. So yes, I do believe he not only failed as a father, but he did fail as a doctor for me, because he wasn't able to take care of his own daughter in a proper way, and mostly he refused to take care in a way he should have taken care. So this only to say that it's not because you're a doctor that you can be a good father and a good dad in such situations. But I digressed again a little bit on the topic. So why eating disorders? Because eating disorders is as it can turn out for the person as bad as alcoholism, as any drug addiction, as it's as dangerous, I would say, as compulsive shopping, compulsive overeating. Anything that is compulsive is at the same level as eating disorders. What's an eating disorder? It's a disruption of balance. Basically, the substance that is supposed to be a medicine for you, which is food, because it allows you to survive. So it's your medicine. It becomes your poison. You use food to poison yourself instead of keeping yourself alive. So we say food can be a medicine, but it can also be a poison. If you replace food by alcohol, alcohol can be a medicine, but it can also be a poison. Shopping can be a medicine, but it can also be a poison. Drugs can be a medicine, but it can also be a poison. Cleaning the house can be a medicine, but it can also be a poison. You become crazy if you do it all the time, and a compulsive cleaning and everything that is compulsive, basically it's bad for you. And particularly for eating disorders, particularly for alcoholism, particularly for drug addiction, for any sort of addiction that involves absorbing a substance, getting a substance into your body, can have very huge side effects and can have very bad impact on your health. And it's crazy how people underestimate the death toll that is caused by eating disorders. People do die of eating disorders, or if they don't die, they end up with so many problems with their health, and which appear later in their later stages of their lives. They end up with diabetes, they end up with teeth erosion, they end up with hormonal imbalance, they end up with irreversible let's say not diagnosis, irreversible health issues. Okay, so which is why, let's define first what's an eating disorder. It's not that an eating disorder is not just once in a while stuffing yourself with some food out of stress, or like you wanted that ice cream so badly and you stuffed yourself with this ice cream. From time to time, we're human beings, we're casual human beings, and sometimes it just happens. You flipped. You ate a little bit more of this, you ate a little bit more of that, you underate, you forgot to eat, sometimes you're so stressed, you have too much studies, you have too much work, it happens. Now the problem starts when it becomes repetitive and when it becomes a routine. So when you deliberately force yourself not to eat, and becoming underweight becomes like the only issue of your life, and you become anorexic, and you reach a point when you need to be hospitalized or nearly hospitalized, this is called anorexia, and this has to be treated. And this is not about the food itself. Again, I'm gonna come back to this point. It's not about the food itself. When you start stuffing yourself with food, and then either vomiting it or not vomiting it consistently every single day, and everything, and you cannot control yourself anymore. You, like, the only thing you can think about is actually food, how to stuff yourself. Do you think it's actually normal? Do you think it's part of a person's will? No, it's not. It's something that is, it masks a bigger problem. It masks the root. So the problem with people who see, it's very important for those people who are being like, who are seeing that the other person is suffering, to help them tackle the problem properly. And if you're a parent, it's actually your responsibility, like, with respect to your child, to help him get out of this shit. Because honestly speaking, the world is already so complicated. Their concentration has to be tripled, quadrupled. They have to be so concentrated on so many things. Life is much more complicated than it was before, during our parents' generation. I'm not saying it was easier before. It was probably much harder, but it was a different system. It's a system that our parents' generation probably cannot fully understand. It's a stressful system that we have to keep up with. It says if it's a different pace, and our concentration needs to be constantly triggered. We have to be constantly here, present in the moment. We have to be mentally strong, and so the energy we're actually losing on this eating disorder, and it's spoiling our life, and that is actually jeopardizing our life. We could spend it more wisely on much bigger issues, which is why it is considered as a disease. It is a disease, but good news, it can be tackled properly. You have all the tools now. And the only thing that parents should do is they should be willing to document themselves. They should be willing to face the problem. They should be able to say, I don't fucking care what X and Y will say about my child because he lost so much weight, because he gained so much weight. Oh, I don't want to show I'm scared that other people will see my child doing this or that. They will think that he's crazy if he's seeing a psychiatrist or if he's seeing a psychologist. Do you actually care about your child, or about what the society is gonna say? Or you're just probably being too lazy, and you're like, I already have so many problems, and this comes at the top. Yeah, this comes at the top. It's part of your duty as a parent to tackle it and to deal with it. And if you're not dealing with it, you're being a criminal. In the context of our world, if you're not helping your child to get out of the shit, you're being a criminal towards your own child. I dare to say it because this is the truth. This is the truth. This is something that your child, and who will later become an adult, your teen, your child who is in his teens, it usually happens in your teens, is gonna carry through the rest of his life, and lots of his other problems are gonna come because of this small problem who became big. It's like a flu. If you don't treat it at the right moment, it becomes bigger. Eventually it can kill the person. So yes, and so things about this. So I talked about anorexia, I talked about bulimia, I talked about compulsive overeating. The three of these are actually dangerous. This is not to take lightly. If you have a friend who's suffering from this, you should also consider taking a few precautions to probably either help your friend or to minimize the risk of making your friend suffer. A very common, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples over here. So from my experience, so I'm gonna get back to myself. I have dealt with this issue for 10 years, beyond 10 years. That's not something to be proud about, but it shaped my history, kind of. It did teach me lots of things. It did cause me lots of problems, as I said. So if you see that your friend lost weight very, very quickly, and out of a sudden this is an alarming sign, actually. If your child is losing weight very quickly, this is an alarming sign. It might not be because he wants to lose weight just to lose weight. It might not be because he wanna look like a ballerina. It might be something else. Research it. Ask question. What's happening? Simply a simple question as like, what's happening, dude? What's happening, my dear daughter? What's happening, my child? What's bothering you? What's bothering you? Because why do people drink? Because something is bothering them. They want to avoid something. They want to escape something. Do they want to hide from something? Do they feel frustrated by something? Do they just pull their frustration into this bottle or this cake or I don't know, whatever? Frustrated, they have an intense emotion that they cannot manage to canalize, and instead of just scolding them for what they ate or what they did or for their behavior, ask why. Be curious, goddamn. Be curious about your own child. Be curious about your own friend. Show some empathy. Show some interest, simply. Because beyond that bunch of food and beyond that bunch of whatever they're trying to stuff themselves with is an emotion that is being stuffed, is an issue that is being stuffed. There's something that is being curbed, and it's gonna pop out anyway at some point. But the person will be already so sick and so in such a bad state. Do you really want this to happen? No, you don't. No, I got kind of the instinct of survival, and I read a bunch of literature on this. I'm into sports since I'm a kid. I was lucky with many things in my life, which is why I'm still standing and talking to you in front of this camera. But not all people have this privilege. Some people, they need to get pulled out with their hairs, and I was actually lucky to escape. I used to weight 40, so I'm 1 meter 68, and at some point I weighed 42 kilograms. Now, just for the record, now I weight 59 or 60, I don't remember, but my weight fluctuates between 58 and 61, somewhere like this, so I must be 60 right now. But so imagine me with 42 kilos. It was scary to watch. I checked a couple of photos of me at that time, how I looked. It was scary to watch, but yeah, that's what the reality. So I needed help. And so the rule number 1 when you're dealing with an anorexic, don't never comment on the person's body. I think that a mistake that my mom did, but then I don't blame her given how she panicked and how she failed to deal with the situation at that time. But she would comment on my body all the time. She would take pictures of my legs. She would keep repeating me how scary it is, how ugly it is. She would keep repeating me the consequences of being anorexic, how I will die, how she kept forcing me to eat. Every meal became a scandal because I would reduce my portions, but I always like, in spite of reducing my portions, I always like to make them, pretty. So she would point out all the negative things because she thought this is how she would be able to love me and to show me some attention. But the truth is that she was ruining it for me, and she did. She did ruin it for me, and I had to get out of it on my own later on because I was sent abroad. I was sent abroad with a pretty alarming state of bulimia. This, like, never send your child abroad if he has eating disorders. If you know that he can get proper medical help in his country of origin, and do not hesitate to kind of like fix his or her brain before sending her abroad, because as I said, I was very lucky. Actually, at many points of my life I was pretty lucky, and now that when I look behind, I would be like, oh my god, this could have gotten so much worse than that. So yeah, dieta is a professional psychiatrist, get a professional psychologist. Don't interfere. The only way you can interfere with your child's recovery is not to make things worse by pointing out with your finger, your face, your way of eating. Eat this. If you don't eat, you're not going out. Ask questions. Talk to the person. Actually talk to her, because beyond the food, as I said, there's something much bigger. There's a much bigger issues, and you have to fuss around it. Obviously, it's a big fuss. And look at this. Look at yourself as a parent or as a friend. Do you really want to fuss with this? But the thing is that if you're parents, you must fuss with this. It's your responsibility. So bulimia. Bulimia is usually it's less prominent than anorexia, because bulimic people, they look normal actually. Because they eat and they vomit. They eat and then vomit. But then, if you want to know whether a person is bulimic or not, check her teeth. Teeth erosion is a very common symptom of bulimia. If you see that the person is pretty normal, but that she's got teeth erosion or he's got teeth erosion, it's an alarming sign that something is actually going wrong. You know, if the person is trying to control her food all the time, also, there are a bunch of symptoms that you'll be like, what's wrong with what's happening? What's happening in her life? What's happening in his life? And here again, it's important to dialogue. It's important to speak about it. It's important to minimize. In the three cases, whether it's compulsive overeating, whether it's bulimia, whether it's anorexia, don't comment on a person's body shape. Don't. Just avoid it a bit. And if you have to comment in a certain context, it has to be very objective. Tea. And, very light. Now, tough luck, I come from a society where, people think it's their duty to point out on your shape, you lost weight, I gained weight, and try to stop them. You'll never be able to do that. Anyway, I'm digressing again. But yeah, you can actually end up with gastric problems, stomach problems from constant vomiting. You don't need this, right? You can end up with metabolism disbalance, problem with your metabolism. You can end up with hormonal disbalance. You can end up with sterility. Very in case of anorexia particularly, watch out, because for girls you can end up with ovary hormonal disbalance, and you can end up not having your periods anymore, which I was actually close to personally. So I didn't get my periods naturally. I had to take some medicine because I was just simply too skinny. Not too skinny, I was anorexic, which is not skinny. Skinny doesn't mean anorexic, and anorexic doesn't mean skinny. That you have to understand. Also, some people are just skinny. Period. You don't have to label every person who is skinny anorexic. That should watch out also. Compulsive overeating. It's also bad because it leads to not only to obesity. You can become compulsive overeater and not to be obese, but you're overcharging your body all the time. You can end up with diabetes very easily. Now, at some point in my life, last year, I did take a decision to reduce drastically sugar. I was still in my recovery process, and yet I did notice signs of diabetes, and I was like, holy shit, I don't want to end up with diabetes at 26. That's ridiculous, right? It is ridiculous. I mean, who wants this shit in his life? And again, my instincts of survival functioned, and I got the right people around me, and I kicked out the right people around me, because this is also the challenge, to kick the right people out from your life and to get the right people to your life. So, and yes, and I did, and I'm very grateful to my therapist, and I'm grateful to my psychiatrist, and I'm grateful to every single person who helped me to get out of this, because it's horrible. It's just horrible. You're young. Life is like just in front of you, waiting for you to shine, to give your best to people, and you're here struggling with your food issues, which could actually destroy you simply. It looks simple, but it's not. It's not to be taken in a light spot. It should be tackled properly. And I repeat myself again, if your friend or your child is suffering from this, don't just close your eyes. Please don't just close your eyes. Research this topic. I will be posting more videos on this topic particularly, and will link it to my personal experience. I hope it will help people to it will help some people simply to wake up, one, and two, to I hope I'll be able to give some maybe tips to help the person that you care about and who is struggling with this particular problem. I hope you all stay safe for now. I know it's the confinement for people who are struggling with these issues. It must not be easy at all. I feel you. I salute you. You are brave. You can do it. Don't panic. Rule number 1 in any difficulties, don't panic. Panic is the mother of all the problems. Don't panic. Just keep it